The Secrets of Hoia Baciu, the forest that consumes reality. In the heart of Transylvania, amidst dark mountains and dense forests, lies Hoia Baciu, a place shrouded in mystery and fear. This forest, with its ancient trees and eerie silence, has become home to numerous legends and inexplicable phenomena, invoking both terror and curiosity in equal measure. Every stone here, every rustle of leaves, seems to hold its own story, its own dark secret. Our story begins with a group of friends: Jake, Katie, Mike, and Laura. They were ordinary young people living in a small American town, seeking fun and adventure. They heard about Hoia Baciu from an old local resident who vaguely mentioned a mysterious forest where reality seems to bend and fear becomes palpable. With the first gusts of autumn wind, they decided to test their courage and venture into this enigmatic thicket. At the threshold of the forest, they were enveloped by a strange feeling, as if they had stepped into another world. The bright sunlight quickly faded, and the thick branches of the forest loomed overhead, as if sheltering them from the outside world. Katie, cheerful and carefree, couldn't hold back her laughter, but Jake noticed the strange silence that hung around them. There were no birds singing, no rustling animals, only the ominous stillness, broken by the whisper of the wind. With every step deeper into the woods, Laura suddenly felt a strange chill emanating from the ground, as though the very earth had come alive, squeezing her legs like invisible hands. "Doesn't it seem too quiet here?" she asked, glancing nervously around. The others shrugged, unwilling to admit to the growing fear within them. Mike, always with the spirit of adventure, suggested they find the legendary circular clearing. Excitement and curiosity sparkled in their eyes. However, the deeper they walked into the forest, the more the stories of horrors associated with Hoia Baciu began to sound increasingly menacing. Disappearances, unexpected UFO sightings, peculiar shadows flickering at the edge of their vision. The echoes of forgotten souls weighed heavily on their hearts. As they traversed the woods, they began to sense that the forest was shifting, the trees seeming to bend as if trying to stop them. Suddenly, Laura froze, staring at a point. "Look," she whispered. "What is that?" Before them lay strange symbols etched into the ground, as if energy had been gathered there for some ritual. Jake, laughing lightly, decided it was just a prank by local residents, but uncertainty crept across his face. The others, feeling uneasy, began to circle around the odd markings. While they examined the symbols, they failed to notice that the woods had gradually descended into complete darkness. As they decided to turn back, a sound echoed, as if someone or something was watching them. Hearts began to race, and a palpable sense of dread enveloped their souls. Laura screamed as a shadow raced before her, a tall figure blurred against the dark forest. Katie grabbed Jake's hand in horror. "Where do we go?" Their path back had closed off. Every movement felt increasingly perilous. Suddenly, Mike noticed that his phone signal had dropped to no service. All attempts to call for help had proven futile. It was as though an invisible force was blocking their way, plunging them deeper into the unknown. They huddled together, this time with trembling voices. Each began to share their fears, as if trying to dispel what had warped their minds. However, this only heightened the pressure, creating an atmosphere thick with anxiety. Then Laura pointed at one of the trees. "Look, there's someone there." On the tree bark were carved human faces, emanating a chilling energy. With heads down in despair, the friends started to realize that they were not alone. they were surrounded by whispers that they could not interpret. These whispers carried fragments of phrases, reminiscent of cries for help from other worlds, lost in time and space. Each felt that with every passing second, they were sinking deeper into this unfamiliar, ominous realm from which there was no escape. Panic mounted. Katie was frantic, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was barely recognizable against the backdrop of the night forest, her fear draining the last drops of optimism. She tried to convince the others. "We have to find a way out. We can't stay here." But the further they moved, the more they felt that the forest was aware of every step, as if it was watching them. They suddenly stumbled upon a massive circular clearing. In the center of the clearing was a small gray glow, flickering like a star in a void. Jake recalled the legends about the portal. Their eyes met, and a feeling of dread washed over them as they understood this was the place they had heard about. As they gathered in a circle, a strong wind suddenly swept through, bringing with it whispers that carried them toward the very void that had been described in old beliefs. Every sound seemed to echo like a crack, calling out to them, filling the space with sorrow into which they had entered. The wind wrapped around them such that every breath felt heavier. No one could withstand this pressure. Laura fell to the ground, as if now she was merely a shadow of her former self among those who were ahead of their real selves. Suddenly, the light from the center of the clearing began to shine brightly, illuminating the whole area. The shadows began to move, and the faces carved on the tree bark started to chant in unison. "You are here, but you are no longer." Cries echoed from everywhere, clutching at their hearts with an icy grip of terror. Summoning their courage, they resolved to flee. "Forward, run!" Jake shouted, throwing his arms wide, as if wishing to rid themselves of fear and pain. They dashed toward the exit, but every motion seemed to lead them back to the clearing. It was as if the space tested their resilience, consuming their broken dreams and hopes. Hours passed, but time felt different here. Strange, illogical. They encountered the enormous circular clearing again. The same small light shimmered in the center. Despair crept in. They were back where they started. What had once been their sanctuary had now become a prison. They began to remember that they had to part ways, each facing their own challenges. Their direction toward the light was now hindered by the clutches of the dark forest. With the weight of their shared dread pressing down upon them, they knew they must join together at least for one last time. In this fleeting moment of camaraderie, they felt it was time to summon their spirits, to dare and confront the shadows that haunted their lives for so long. As they raced forward, one by one, they began to vanish into the void of the hand that shaped this reality, screaming and shocking the world which was just before them. In the end, they understood. No matter what, Hoia Baciu would remain within their memories. A place where reality and consciousness intertwined, where each step could be the last, and where fear became part of life itself. The Mysteries of Ushwood Forest. Legends, Fear, and Secrets. Ushwood Forest, sprawling in the heart of England, is shrouded in an aura of mystery and legends that captivate tourists and explorers alike. However, behind the romantic landscapes and bright sunny days lies another, darker world, filled with twisted knots of darkness. This is not just a story of the paranormal, but a tale of tragedies, betrayals, and the evil that waits in the shadows for its moment. According to local legends, something terrible happened in this forest. The tragic death of Lady Lester, the wife of Lord Lester, the owner of these lands. Legends recount how she was found dead at dawn, leaving no clues behind except for a mysterious scar on her neck that terrified even the most stoic locals. This untimely death led to horrible events, shrouded in whispers passed from mouth to mouth. Far beyond the forest limits, in a small town nearby, two friends, Billy and Kate, arrived one weekend hoping to immerse themselves in the strange legacy of the woods. "Do you believe in ghosts?" Billy asked, taking a step onto the dry leaves that crackled underfoot, as if warning of impending danger. "I believe they're invented to scare kids at night." Kate smiled, trying to relax, although a hint of anxiety was evident in her voice. "But this story, it has something special, unlike ordinary tales." The forest was steeped in contemplation. Tall trees, thick underbrush, and shadows hanging from branches surrounded them. Occasionally, rays of light broke through the foliage, but the darkness in the thicket felt alive. Billy and Kate pressed on, threading their way through the dense vegetation, pushing their imaginations to the limit. As they ventured deeper, evening gradually cloaked the sky, and soon the oppressive darkness hung over them. Silence, broken only by rustling sounds, enveloped them in a state of unease. Suddenly, there was a crack. A startled scream erupted from Kate as she stopped in her tracks. "Is that just leaves?" Billy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. They both froze, listening. The trees whispered in the wind, and amid that eerie sound began to emerge an ancient song. It seemed someone invisible was singing to them about lost souls. Rumors about Uchwood Forest had consumed the area. At night, locals dared not venture beyond their homes. For generations, they whispered of how the forest was steeped in grief and evil. Shadows that crept along the ground reminded them of the lost souls who perished in its roots. With each passing day, the fear deepened, dragging them further into the impenetrable darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. "You heard that?" Billy asked, his heart racing as he scanned the black void beyond the trees. Deep within the forest, there were sounds. The unmistakable impression that something unseen was watching them. And this presence felt predatory, an entity that would not relent until they were ensnared in its grasp. "Billy, what is it?" Kate whispered, darting her gaze into the shadows that loomed just beyond their sight. The forest seemed to close in around them, and they were gripped by a sensation of being hunted. "We have to go back to the river. Maybe we can find our way back," Billy urged. But as they turned, the forest encased them in its malevolence. The moment they tried to navigate, the trees twisted and shifted, as if they were alive, eager to entrap their souls. They found themselves before a river, roaring and crashing. It sounded as if ghosts were hiding within its depths, mocking them from the shadows. "There!" exclaimed Kate, pointing at a strange light flickering through the branches. "We have to go towards that." Ignoring their instincts to turn back, they raced towards the light, desperate to escape the dread that surrounded them. Passing through the underbrush, they emerged into an open glade illuminated by fireflies. After the oppressive darkness of the forest, this sight felt like a breath of fresh air. However, as they reveled in the moment, they failed to notice that something sinister lurked in the shadows. A ghostly figure appeared on the clearing, Lady Lester, cloaked in the mist. Her long white dress flowed as if the night itself draped over her. Billy and Kate stared in horror. Chills coursed down their spines. "Where have you come from?" she asked, her voice a whisper that felt icy against the balmy air, yet it carried an undercurrent of sorrow and longing for vengeance. "We didn't mean to disturb you," Kate said, trying to muster composure despite the unease swelling within her. "We were just searching for the secrets of the forest. We heard about you." "I am here to warn you," Lady Lester replied, her tone growing ever more ominous. "The forest does not forgive. Neither will I." Billy felt a cold sweat on his brow. The ghostly figure stepped closer and closer, her face becoming a blur, a reflection of their fears. Kate urged Billy to run. They were in danger, but what they could not yet comprehend was that this entity was not just a ghost. She was a harbinger, entwined with the sinister forces of the woods, and she needed them to be part of her tale, to weave them into a narrative of revenge spanning centuries. "Go! We don't want any harm," they implored, but the once peaceful forest surrounded them like a vice, making their escape seem futile. Suddenly the air thickened with an eerie stillness, and the very shadows seemed to come alive. They soon heard a voice, no longer just a haunting echo. It was something darker, a presence weaving tightly around them. "You do not realize the sanctity you have trespassed." A sinister creature emerged from the shadows, its face twisted as it grinned with malice. "You become part of the voices, forever haunting, forever tortured." "Get away!" Kate screamed, her voice trembling, grasping Billy's hand to flee. They stumbled deeper into the heart of the forest, the mirage of safety fading. Every sound grew louder, every rustle spoke their names, and a creeping dread washed over them. They ran, desperate for any escape, hoping to find the river bridge again, but the forest was shifting again. The tree roots, alive and omnipotent, entwined around them, holding them tight within its grip. "Help me!" echoed through the grove, desperate cries coming from all directions. It was the scream of the unfortunate souls, bound here, unwilling victims who had ventured too close and paid the price. With every flicker of moonlight, Kate and Billy's breaths quickened. Darkness encircled them, and death loomed like a tapestry waiting to be woven. The realization struck them. They were not alone. They too were ensnared in the tapestry of pain and anguish, woven by Lady Lester's spirit and the evil the forest had cultivated over generations. "Billy, we can't stay," Kate urged, but her pleas were drowned out by the cacophony of despair echoing through the expanse. Each soul cried out, tugging at their will to escape, merging their suffering into a vortex that threatened to trap them within the earth's bosom. "What can we do?" Billy gasped, feeling hopeless. Panic consumed him as the darkness closed in. They were part of an eternal curse, a cycle of despair that had begun long before them. In the moment of sheer desperation, a flicker of defiance ignited within them. They had to fight against the horror they now faced. With every ounce of will, they sprinted through the shadows, forging their path not as prisoners but as warriors against the fate that awaited them. But the forest wouldn't release them so easily. A deafening howl rang in the air, a sorrowful wail of spirits yearning for liberation, merging with the forest itself. The once peaceful landscapes transformed into a menacing tableau, mirroring their fear and anguish. They reached the edge of the river, where the water roared, crashing against the rocks, seemingly alive, offering salvation from the despair looking to claim them. "Jump!" Billy shouted, knowing it held no security but the promise of evading the grasp of darkness. With a desperate leap, they plunged into the icy waters, breaking free from the tangled roots. Pulled under, they struggled against the current, their hearts racing, unsure if the forest would relinquish its hold. Emerging on the other side, gasping for air, they looked back. The shadows danced on the banks, swirling in a furious storm. The specter of Lady Leicester watched, her eyes filled with a melancholic fury, a vivid reminder that they had evaded one battle, but might face another. Ushwood Forest remained steeped in secrets, guarding its agony and history. Billy and Kate surrendered themselves to the wilderness of their thoughts as they fled, carrying the weight of the forest's darkness with them. Some say they still wander, marked by the forest, forever chained to the tales of despair. The whispers of their experience cascade through the whispering winds, reminding future wanderers that sometimes the most beautiful places conceal the darkest secrets. Sometimes fear is not merely an emotion, but a warning, a plea to tread lightly before legend morphs into reality. And so, Ushwood Forest stands, a reminder of the shadows that lurk in the realm of the unknown, a specter that haunts even the sunniest days, waiting to entrap the hearts of the unwary. It is a story forever etched in the annals of enchantment and dread, murmuring to those who dare approach its depths, roots entwined with legacy, darkness, and the resurrection of tormented souls.